From doing laundry to washing the dishes, unpaid work is bad for our mental health. Women's do the majority of unpaid labor, and it creates a taxing mental load. So let's break this down before we get to the wah. First, in the interest of full disclosure, I'm a single man. I do my own laundry. I do my own dishes. I clean my own house. I do my own cooking. I'll admit I don't cook all the time. Sometimes I just heat something up and eat it. Point is, no one is going to do anything around this house but me. I do everything myself. And somehow I'm able to keep up with everything. And I never feel like the housework is any big deal. Meanwhile, one of my friends, his wife is a stay-at-home wife. They don't even have kids. She works maybe half an hour a day and spends the rest of her time just lounging around, complaining about how hard she has it. Just a little comparison there. Now, that aside, let's break down the whole concept of unpaid work. Now, there's one situation where I can actually sympathize with the whiners here. If both the man and the woman work equal hours and get roughly the same amount of money, and the woman still does all the work around the house on top of that, that is kind of bullshit right there. In my opinion, whoever brings in the most money, whoever works the longest hours, they're the ones that'll be doing less of the housework for obvious reasons. If I have to explain to you why that is, like, why is it that the guy who works 80 hours a week could be expected to get out of doing the housework when his wife only works like a 10-hour part-time job and brings in hardly any money? Why do you think he'd be excused from doing, quote unquote, his fair share? It's obvious. These women call it unpaid work. These women don't pay rent. They don't pay for their food. They don't pay for the utilities. And they call the work they do unpaid work. Again, if both people in the couple work an equal amount outside the house, but only one of them does all the work in the house, okay, I'll give you that. That's bullshit. But if you're not expected to contribute at all towards the bills, towards the finances of the house, you basically live there for free, and you still bitch when you're expected to do some work around the house, you are the problem. And to be fair, this also applies to men. I've personally known men like this too. They just leeches. They mooch off of parents or friends or whatever, even sometimes girlfriends, and don't do anything and get mad when they're expected to do something to cover their expenses. Those are the types of people I generally see complaining about unpaid work. Oh, I know I live here for free and I have all my basic needs catered to, but how dare you expect me to actually clean up after myself for free? They get mad when you expect them to do their own laundry. Like, dude, those are your clothes, you dumb bitch. You expect me to clean up after you? Hell no. I've been agonizing over how to respond to an email for the last 48 hours. I bet she considers the last 48 hours just agonizing over that email. That counts as work to her. It doesn't involve a medical issue, a work deadline, some horrifying piece of news, kids back to school task that requires unearthing the dreaded label maker, or logging into some Byzantine online portal, all of which are represented in full force on my inbox. Just a completely anodyne suggestion from a colleague of a college friend who's eager to talk about a project she's working on and whom I'm eager to meet. Want to try for a happy hour meetup next week? Wow, that's something to agonize over. I mean, yes, I'd love to. Me, a martini, some non-expendable pants, some all outside at dusk, Valhalla. But then my brain short circuits because my happy hour of the last 6 years, which, yes, is happy, but also chaotic, involves scraping baba ganoush out of my baby's hair, shoveling salmon into my 3-year-old's mouth as she sits under the table, methodically stickering the floor. Stickering, okay. Listening to the appropriate military soundtrack of Strauss Radetzky's March, courtesy of my first grader practicing piano. So instead of saying sure, I've spent the last few days doing mental calisthenics, including but not limited to considering if my husband's week of upcoming work travel allows me a compensatory week of non-bedtime, bath time responsibilities. So women think this is like some unique problem that only they have to deal with, when like this is literally the same thing men have to deal with all the time. Like, hey bro, you want to hang out next week? Yeah, sure. Let me check my work schedule and see if my boss will give me the day off. That's what this is in way less words. If this is the moment to rip off the Band-Aid and start saying yes to non-critical social events, if non-critical social events might lead to critical and important work developments, if that time might be better spent sorting hand-me-down baby clothes into piles that take into account the size and seasonality preferences of various younger cousins, or if mom's schedule might allow her to come by even an extra set of hands, you may wonder why I'm up to in the middle of the night so tightly wound. It's all I can do to stop from slingshotting out of bed to get breakfast ready by moonlight, just to take out one thing off my list. Well, if you would rather go to work and have your husband take care of the kids, I mean, a surprisingly high number of men would be okay with that deal, because guys know how difficult a lot of these jobs actually are. Now, I understand that caring for an infant that wakes up every 3 minutes shrieking, like, yeah, that's a very stressful, very, very hard job. But most of the other stuff that women tend to complain about, again, like I mentioned at the beginning of this article, I take care of all of that myself. It's not a problem. Like, doing the dishes is fucking easy and quick. Doing the laundry is fucking easy and quick. It's not like the old days where you had to hand wash everything on a scrubbing board. Doing the laundry is literally just emptying a basket into a machine and hitting a few buttons, and then moving it to a different machine and hitting a few more buttons, and then just folding it and putting it away. This is the kind of stuff these petty ass mofos complain about. I already do most of everything except for raising children. I already do by myself with no complaints. Let's just say if I were to get a girlfriend and she moved in with me and then started bitching about having to do the housework I was already doing myself while I was already doing my multiple jobs, she is immediately out the fucking door. Like, why the fuck do I even have you around here if you're not willing to do like the bare minimum? If you're not even willing to do the bare minimum around here to cover your keep and help me out in some way, why the fuck do I even keep you around? Time is a resource of health. Jennifer Irvin told me over a Zoom. There's a double burden for so many women's of having a paid workforce position, and then once the work ends, huge amounts of unpaid labor in the mornings and evenings. Again, I need some details. If this woman works at a day job just as much as her husband does and is expected to do all the housework, then I actually agree that's pretty bad. If both people work, then both of them should split the housework. If only one of them has a job that brings an income, it's the other's responsibility to do all of the remaining housework. Going back to like my own example again, if I was already paying someone else's bills and I got back from like a 60-hour work week and just wanted to rest, and then she was like, when are you going to do your half of the chores? All right, you're out. Because fun fact, a lot of this extra work that they complain about, a lot of it is just drama bullshit caused by multiple people. Because if I moved in with somebody else, I think my stress and workload would increase just because I'm dealing with another person's bullshit in addition to my own. If that other person can cover their own bullshit and preferably a little bit of my own, It's actually a benefit to me to keep them around. But if keeping someone else around does nothing but create more work and stress for me, and they're not my children, get the fuck out. I have no reason to live with you. Now, Irvin is the lead researcher of a study that came out of the University of Melbourne. Why there's so much soy-based shit coming out of the University of Melbourne? You guys need to fix your shit. Published at the Lancet earlier this month, entitled Gender Differences in the Association Between Unpaid Labor and Mental Health in Employed Adults, a systematic review. I do all this unpaid labor while doing multiple jobs, and it's no big deal. Like, they're just complaining to hear themselves complain. That's all this is. Believed to be a first of its kind to examine a gender intersection in the three realms, work, home, and mental health, that has happened to make up the bulk of my daily concerns. After reviewing 14 studies, some of which examined housework time, others childcare, others unpaid labor, Irvin's report concludes that inequities in the division of unpaid labor expose women to greater risk of poor mental health than men, a result of so-called role conflict and role overload, which triggers stress-related pathways and thereby can affect psychological well-being. And this is why men are basically just looking at women and going, nah, you're not worth all the extra stress. The more rushed you are, the more time pressure, the more tasks you're juggling simultaneously, the more likely you are to get stressed. Obviously. One study referenced by Irvin found that rushing is linked to being a whammons. Oh, my God. So if you're a man, you've never rushed before. All right, makes perfect sense. Yeah, then rushing is a uniquely whammons problem now. You see, this is why no one takes them seriously. Lone parenthood, disability, those are true. Lack of control, no shit. And work-family conflicts. Hey, if you reduce the amount of people that do nothing but cause drama in your life, that makes a lot of shit easier. Because, like, every single one of you listening right now, I'd be willing to bet money that you could name at least one person, be it a friend or family member in your life, that does nothing but cause drama. Why do you keep them around? Rushing is linked to being a whammons. Sigh. And that's unironic. Unpaid labor is a concept that has been studied in the sociological literature for quite some time, usually through the lens of fairness and gender parity or workplace participation. In current year -4, the American Time Use Survey found that whammons aged 25 to 34 spend 8 hours a day on unpaid work. Bull shit. The only time that's true is if you have kids. No, you're not going to be able to convince me that all the shit that I'm able to get done around here in a few hours a week tops takes you 8 hours a day. Shut the fuck up, you lying bitch. Yeah, versus men, 3.9 hours. I don't spend 3.9 hours a day. This shit is easy. 3.9 hours a week, maybe, total, combined. Yeah, but only for ages 35 to 44, that goes up to 5.2 for men and whopping 8.8 for whammons. Again, only understandable if you have kids. But only recently, Irvin told me, researchers started to examine it as a social determinant of health. Corona-chan contributed to soaring anxiety and stress the world over as all the sheep once again fell for the sky is falling. And the American Psychological Association pronounced the national health crisis could yield serious health and social consequences for years to come. Yeah, what do you know? You keep telling people that no, they're going to die if they go outside. You might cause some mental issues. In America, just how are the mental shards of my brain being affected by the constant, slightly deranged chatter of my to-do list, and how to most efficiently complete it? I'm sure bitching about it on the internet is definitely step one. I know that when I fill out the permission slips and make sure we have the milk and schedule the doctor's appointments and do the laundry, that's all unpaid labor. Minus the raising children part, none of this is hard. The term's fuzzy designation makes it to borrow from the famous Supreme Court case, a bit like porn. You know it when you see it. While my hedging about an email response is not exactly necessarily the same as doing a load of laundry, it's not entirely different either. It's both a consequence of the unpaid labor and a form of it, Irvin told me, which is one of the challenges of studying the topic. Yeah. It's confirmation bias. Like that's what this whole thing is. Oh yeah, you have it so hard. Poor you. The mental load, whether or not it comes under the umbrella of unpaid labor, and a lot of people would agree it does, is very hard to capture. Oh. So now stressing about pointless shit counts to them as unpaid labor. Now, okay, now it makes sense. Now the 8 hours a day that women spend on unpaid labor, it makes perfect sense when you consider that they consider stressing about pointless bullshit to be unpaid labor. Mystery solved. So your mental issues are now unpaid labor, and I am somehow responsible. Got it. Now, how can you measure what's going on in someone's brain when they're on a Zoom and getting a call from their kid's school and thinking about what they need to do later that night? And one of the more nuanced points of the study is that women's carry a greater mental load of household labor. Therefore, one unpaid hour is considered denser and more impactful for women than men. Therefore, might not be directly comparable. So, because women make things more difficult for themselves, we should step up, guys. We need to support them. It's partially the reason the researchers posit that unpaid labor is less likely to result in poorer mental health for men, which might in turn be due to the type of tasks men often take on. If you live by yourself, you do all the same things, and yet women stress about things more and cause more drama. Therefore, they have more mental labor. Like that's this article, basically. Well, I appreciate the researcher's suggestion that outdoor or maintenance tasks might fall into this bucket of less time sensitive, possibly more enjoyable unpaid labor. My husband, a tech guy, is likely to pick up a rake or a screwdriver as he is to spontaneously start orating Chaucer from memory. But I take their point, and this mental load, constant, invisible, perniciously seeping into most of my waking and sleeping hours, is something that Irvin herself wrestles with in her own home, where she and her husband are raising 2 daughters. Man, these women just seem like absolute gems to be around, like always causing problems for themselves and everyone around them, and then expecting you to take responsibility for it. I have a particularly egalitarian husband with respect to his views, but that doesn't necessarily translate to the day to day. So she said, uttering what could be the headline of nearly every conversation I had with girlfriends. And it's really hard to shift the dial at an individual household level. How I wondered, could I force my husband to join me in the trenches of obsessively thinking about labeling a preschooler's change of clothes for school until the task was completed? Yeah, because you know how the husband would handle that? Don't fucking do it. You're obsessed. You got obsessive compulsive disorder. There's medication for that. You don't need to do this. All of this extra bullshit you're doing to yourself. Stop. You are the main cause of your own problems. Now, she's a firm believer that the better of the parental leave policies of a given country, the more impactful and positive the ripple effect. Since if a father is taking care of a child from an early age, it sets the stage for more caregiving later on. Norway, a country that allots a whopping 49 weeks of parental leave to families, with 15 weeks given to specifically to each parent in a use it or lose it model. One is to emulate. So they're paying for people to not work like 49 weeks. That's 2 weeks shy of a full year that you're costing the company and not actually doing anything. That's why your pay is so low. You know that, right? So benefits at work are nice, but they come at the expense of your paycheck. Well, it's pointless to try to argue logic with some of these people. Though Irvin isn't particularly optimistic that the rest of the world is going to catch up anytime soon, which is partially why she felt it key to research and publish the study. So countries like the US, like there was a reason that until recently we were the driving force of a lot of innovation, because we were the ones that worked 80-hour weeks and got shit done. Honestly, a lot of the rest of the world was coasting along on our work. Imagine if they didn't have someone else to do the work for them. Could they afford to take a year off constantly? 50% of the population is going, okay, it's not news to anybody, she snorted. Had to do the pig roach. It's people's lived experience, absolutely, but to show it on a population level is important. It's only then that the other 50% of the population might get on board and actually rethink workplace flexibility, parental leave, and other family-friendly policies. Now, I'm not against this myself. I wouldn't mind getting paid more money to do less. I'm all for that. Where do I sign up? After a few more days of hemming and hawing, I said yes to that happy hour meetup. It's going to be at 4 p.m. It might involve coffee instead of a martini. I may be back in time to catch half of my own family's happy hour, but I'm looking forward to it. And on we stumble. Good. I'm sure you're happy. Your family's going to be happy to have you there, causing more drama and work for them.